thank you again.
Yeah. I just want to bring up one other stress too, which I think ties in so well to, you know, what Fish Brew offers. But also maybe, Leah, if you could speak around the bioremediation or treatment of even things like heavy metals that both humonic and fulonic can provide, both cannabis growers and those who are dealing with the environmental stresses of contamination.
Yeah, contamination. I'm actually working on a project right now that is dealing with high salinity soils. And so trying to remediate soils, I mean, this is basically they're irrigating out of a brackish aquifer. So it's, you know, it's going to be a perpetual issue. But any kind of heavy metals or toxins, humic acids are chelators as well, but they're going to bind to the more challenging of molecules in the soil environments. They kind of serve in that, like, the heavier remediation really does come from the humics. Fulvic is going to take those sort of more active nutrients and make them more bioavailable. But yeah, there's a lot of our opportunity to work in wastewater treatment. If you're dealing with algae bloom, again, as you'd mentioned, like just darkening the water, that can make a huge impact on remediating algae out of irrigation ditches, for example. If you're in a field, what you get out, what you put in. So if you're putting in contaminated water, it's not going to be, you're just going to have contaminated soil, which is going to harm the plants or at least reduce the productivity of the yield of that crop. So in terms of like heavy metals, I mean, it's still an area that I'm diving in a little bit more. So I'm certainly no expert in toxics and in remediation, but I've got some learned people amongst us that we could certainly dive into that some more. But there's definitely an application for it. It doesn't eliminate the matter portion of those toxins. It will bind to heavy metals and make them less available, which is beneficial on the agriculture side of things. But when you're dealing with wastewater treatment, you still need to have a physical removal process. So that's still something that isn't eliminated, but you can still contribute to making that process a little bit easier, and you're taking the right parts out and you're getting more of that buildup and leaving, you know, the water behind, but you're getting more of that buildup out of those tainted waters or affected waters.
I think those in the regulated cannabis market that have to address cadmium, mercury, arsenic, and lead. Yeah. One of the real benefits of having something like humonic getting into that soil, especially in a living soil bed, is that it will give off extra electrons, right? So because it's so heavily charged, those metals will take on even more electrons, and then they become even less available for the plant to take up. So it's one of those things. Yeah, it's not going to get rid of it out of your bed. Yeah, but it's going to make it even harder for that plant uptake of those metals.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't have these RO systems, and not all facilities can afford. These are very expensive systems. So some of even the craft cultivators that are just relying on their city water, they're not able to. I mean, it's a huge cost to put in an actual mechanical system to remove these heavy metals out of the water that's available to them. So what is something that they can use? They can use a humic. They can use something like this that will just bind off those heavy metals and those ions to make them less readily available. And if they're stuck in a situation where they can't afford a mechanical system to help reduce some of that, or have some form of filtration system that helps to reduce that, this is something that they can absolutely and cost effectively. I think the most important thing is it is cost effective. Humic and fulvic shouldn't be an arm and a leg. I think with our full program, we've got it dialed into at the full bore of our program integrated into your system. For a full crop, it might be 50 cents a plant. So it's really not that expensive if you can increase the yield, the flavor, the quality, if it can improve the terpene profile, your cannabinoid profile. If your plant is alleviating the environmental stressors that it's dealing with, and sometimes there are stressors that you can't see that is causing it to not uptake as well, that if you can eliminate that or reduce that greatly, you're going to see this in the chemical analysis. You're going to see it perform in the plant. Not only is the plant going to look better and have bigger colas and or produce a bigger fruit, whatever you're growing for, the flavor profile is going to be a bit more pronounced, and you're going to get a better quality. I'm also looking at ways that I'm trying to find a way that we can, I'm working with the lab to try to dial down a test that we can actually take the fruit itself that's been grown with our fulvic acid and take it to the lab and detect the fulvic acid in the fruit, because we know it's in there. So how do we actually test it and validate that it's being retained within the fruit? Because that's normally in antiquity, when our fruit or produce is grown in soil, that's how we would get it. That's how we would access the fulvic acid.